Hi guys, welcome to OCD Recovery Real Talk. Once more, as always, every week we come on to just like annoy people to talk about OCD again. But today we don't honestly have like anything specific in mind, but we all had different ideas about, maybe we can look at some guilt, maybe we can look at some POCD. Because yeah, sometimes we come in and we don't we have a lot of things on our mind and we can go in all sorts of directions. But who would like to begin? What do you want to discuss? Elliot, so why don't you start? Because if talking about, when you have a certain theme that's kind of in the background that doesn't feel fully latched, but it still feels this like annoyance that going on. Like, so can you talk about that feeling?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you've got that new theme that's trying to latch on in the background, it's important to try and be as rational as you can about it. Saying that it must not latch, saying that it'll be so terrible if it latched, that's just laying the pathway for it to latch, right? You got to look at it a lot more sort of rationally and think, well, you know what, even if it does latch, I can handle discomfort. I've been there before and I have to go through it again. It's just the nature of the disorder. It's going to move around, it's going to morph. Um, but yeah, with like so I had like just being brutally honest, I had a big latching attempt from POCD probably about a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. When it tries to latch, it feels very, very scary in that moment. It's really intense. It's very unsettling, and you naturally just want to push it away. But the way I sort of dealt with it and sort of not made it latch essentially was like not being so demanding that it doesn't latch, but also just not rushing to dispute and rushing to break down the beliefs about POCD in the day that it tried to latch. Just let it simmer for a couple of days, maybe a few days, and then you can dispute it lightly for a bit. Because OCD knows that you're scared of it. And if you're just, as we said the other week, Sam said about just writing down a belief on paper, just trying to make it not stick, and that's not going to work. So yeah, it's just the nature of the disorder, and it's going to try and do that. So you just need to be aware of that across many different themes. Like I had it for POCD, and
So, like, I always like to talk in metaphors and analogies, even on call. So, like, I sometimes also see it as when a new theme is coming up, or someone is having a bit of a setback, or they're relapsing, whatever. It's also like your car is going downhill, right? Like, it's going down, and you're trying essentially like you're really pumping the brakes to be like, no, I don't want to fall, something that can take me, you're literally
yeah,
reversing on on a steep cliff, right?
mm,
And you're really like trying to reverse back, to go back up, to just not like somehow relapse, to just not have a setback. And I've always noticed this, like, no amount of, like, sometimes, not always, but no amount of giving advice, no amount of talking through it helps, because I know also that the other person is going to do what they want to do in the moment, which is like trying to control to not relapse.
yeah,
And you at times you also have to let someone fall and hit rock bottom for the moment, for them to then recollect themselves organically and then be like, okay, let's work on this. Because if you're trying to really pull, that's where the fear ramps up and that's where the anxiety ramps up. Because that's the opposite of accepting that maybe you are having a setback and maybe you are like, having a bit of a relapse with a theme or a new theme or something. So sometimes I still give advice, of course, because like people come in for calls and whatnot. But like I mentally in my head, I also know that they are going to hit rock bottom, and it's not something I can obviously control with for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Before I jump in, I got something to show you all. So
By
back
the
at
way,
this.
Sam, like
Oh, mine.
you didn't even have to do a presentation. You could have just subtly sipped from it, and it would have
Yeah.
been like, oh, you just made it a thing. It didn't have to be a thing.
I was waiting to speak, and now my tea's gone cold. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so I mean, you could have sipped it before.
um, but yeah, just to jump in there, exactly what you're saying, Moment. Sometimes you just got to let yourself spiral, because if
Mm,
you try and intervene, if you try and intercept, you're just fueling the fire, because you're kind of in a way showing that, okay, I need to give this attention. So like when I had a lot of latching attempts, whether it was a new theme or just, I could tell it was trying to latch with something. OCD was focusing on something, really trying to take my attention away, trying to make me ruminate over it. There might be an event that's just happened, or maybe it's found something in the past 4 years ago. Maybe it's a thought that's just come in, whatever it may be. And you can tell. I used to get a lot when I was out drinking the night before and waking up the next morning. I used to get a lot then. It was battering me trying to find something the night before that I couldn't quite remember. I remember having that a lot. So when that was happening, it's just let that play out. Don't get in the way. Don't just go, okay, I need to figure this out for OCD, and carry on with the day regardless. Because as soon as you try and figure it out, you might as well just hand your keys over to OCD, because as soon as and it feels so automatic. I get that. It feels like there's no other choice. I understand that because I live like that for years. But just to try and resist just working it out. Don't try and figure it out. Go with the uncertainty.
Let yourself
Because,
fall. Literally let
Yeah.
yourself fall.
I said it the other week. You don't want to get into the habits, the snowball effect of like avoidance and compulsion, because that's when you're really laying it to latch, right?
Yeah.
Like in those initial moments,
Yeah.
you've got to stand firm. You've got to say, no, I'm not doing these avoidances. I'm not doing these compulsion. Like,
when your back's against the wall, that's the biggest. When you're really up against it, when OCD is piling up the pressure, that's when you don't give in to compulsions. Because as soon as you do, we tough that is, right? We understand how bloody difficult that is.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest chance to change, right? Because you're not going to change just coasting along, not being triggered. Triggers are the moment for change, right? The moment that you learn, the moment you see what you're scared of. And that's when you know what belief work to do. But in that moment, don't avoid, because as soon as you're triggered, it's so easy just to say, no, I'm going to bed. I'm not going out. I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to run out the room. All these things that you might be triggered by. So do not give in to that compulsion. Let yourself spiral and just crack on with the day regardless. Crack on with the moment. If you're out with your partner, if you're out with your friend, just carry on doing it and let that play out. Let that discomfort be there.
Alexander,
I think.
I
Yeah.
can first go ahead, and I'll ask the question anyway, and you can incorporate it somewhere in between. I just also wanted to know, what were, do you remember the initial moments when POCD was trying to latch for you and how that felt? And you can incorporate in that answer whatever you were about to say.
Yes, I remember it because I didn't have an idea what OCD is, and I was struggling with it for 2 months. Constant panicking, broke up with my girlfriend because it was our OCD. Schizophrenia OCD, I thought I was going crazy. And I think that when POCD latched, I was kind of euphoric because before that I was struggling with schizophrenia OCD, and I think I reassured myself that I can't have schizophrenia because I'm afraid of it and I'm aware of schizophrenia. So, and 10 minutes I was almost happy, and then bam, false memory, and then after this false memory, POCD just latched, and it was maybe one of the hardest moments of my life because I've never experienced such intense anxiety, and it was a feeling like the reality is falling apart, and I didn't know what to do at all. So yeah, it was really scary.
I'm sure you
also, yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, and in addition to what you guys were speaking, I just wanted to provide an example when another team latched. I remember when I was struggling with POCD maybe for 8 months, and I just found OCD recovery and started watching some videos from the channel. And I started seeing kind of hope. And then I remember I was watching Nick's video, and he was describing his sensory motor OCD. And it was after a few minutes, I was just blink, and sensory motor latched to me. It was again, panicking, and I was no, I don't want it. I must to push it away because I am struggling so much with POCD and these things now. And it was, I tried to resist it, really. I don't know that I have to, okay, just let it play out. So I remember struggling for a week with blinking OCD, and then it morphed to breathing OCD. And then, I just decided, okay, but I don't struggle now with POCD, so let it be. Let
Like,
me struggle with
I think
sensory motor OCD.
I
Yeah,
think Nick's videos have been like triggering for many people. Like there's so many people who have come on the calls as well, and they're like, oh, I was watching Nick's video and suddenly I was like, no, I don't want sensory motor OCD, because I don't know,
yeah,
it also seems
Very,
like a
very
like
is that
niche,
very,
unique theme, even though many people suffer from it. And for some reason it just like feels scary when people like listen to it.
yeah.
So yeah.
Alex?
But the point is that when I decided that let it be, let me struggle with sensory motor, my brain just came back to POCD again initially. So
Yeah.
this is interesting. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alex, I can totally relate to that. Watching a video and then blink, blink, breathe, breathe.
Yeah, yeah. And panic.
I
In
never
that
had
moment.
that. Like, so it's very interesting because, like, for me, my themes, like classic, like we've discussed on Real Talks as well. Like, I had like slight, bless you. We had like slight, bless you
Bless you.
again.
Sorry.
Imagine
Um,
the rest of the video was just Elliot sneezing.
yeah, we were talking
Sorry.
about sensory motor. Now he's sneezing, and after this, he'll just be thinking about what. But it's just that, like, yeah, I've had like some bouts, some few days of like slight sensory motor breathing stuff and whatnot. But for me, for some reason, it classically remained guilt related stuff and stuff around fear of being like sad and miserable forever. And that came in like as contamination and relationship OCD. And classically, those were the two themes I like went through. Of course, then there were just like other problems, fear related. But for me, it never, like, if I heard someone with POCD or with sensory motor or whatnot, didn't make a difference for me. So I don't know. It's just interesting that it just
I,
latched differently.
I at the time sensory motor latch for me, Alex. It was very similar because it was when Nick was like first coming, like doing the videos on the channel more regularly. Is when he first coming on the scene, and I was out on a run actually, and I was actually thinking about, because I never thought about that before sensory motor. I never thought how OCD could just latch to your blinking, your swallowing, uh, your
I mean,
breathing.
Nick, I'm just laughing at Nick coming onto the scene. Like some upcoming artist who is, released his first few singles, getting like fame. But anyway, go ahead.
But I remember running, and obviously whilst you're running, you're breathing quite heavily. You're digging deep because you're struggling a bit if you're really going for it. And all of a sudden, it latched to my blinking whilst out on a run because I was thinking about it before the run. I was thinking, oh yeah, imagine if it latched to that. But it just got me. And then the rest of the run, I was blinking like mad. And I was like, oh, what do I do? So I had to luckily, I didn't latch. But at that time, that could have latched big time because, and same as existential as well. When I first heard about that, I didn't think about it. And then you start thinking about it more deeply, going, bloody hell. Like, what is if this is true? What is if this person is the only person, they know what they're on about? They're saying the truth and no one else knows about this thing, and then go down the spiral that way. So it's funny how new themes suddenly latch out of nowhere. You might just get a small insight into the theme, and then boom, it's latched.
I remember it was about 4 years ago, right? So I was in a club in Ibiza in Amnesia, and it's got a capacity of about 4,000 people, and I was like bang in the middle of this dance floor, and there was loads of people brushing past me, and I thought, shit, what if I get contaminated? And like in that moment, I just wanted to dart to the bathroom, like run, get out, go wash myself and whatever. But like it was good because I had HOCD already and like ROCD and stuff, so I knew it was trying to do.
But was
So
it like, what do you remember specifically what you were afraid of being contaminated with?
I don't know. I think it was just like just germs in general, just like some
Right,
sort of
right.
is getting transmitted to a disease. So yeah, I wanted to just dart out and just run. And I remember just standing bright red on the dance floor, just thinking, "Oh my God, get me out of here!" But you can't, right? If you do that, like I said before, if you do that, you just setting yourself up for the
But
time.
also, like in the moment, you also don't realize that this is a new theme or something. It's just like, oh, this feeling is coming
Yeah,
on, and I just feel
it's,
like doing whatever this, and you don't
it's,
even realize
it's
you're
how
doing
real
something about it. Go ahead, Sam.
yeah.
sorry, it's how real it feels because it just takes you off your feet. In
Mm.
that moment, can't tell it's OCD or not because it's just
No.
so overwhelming. If you could just say, yeah, it's OCD, it's fine. But the
Yeah.
reason it lasts is, you can't tell or you don't even realize it is OCD. You're like, bloody hell, all of a sudden this big anxiety takes over, the panic, guilt out of nowhere. And you're like, hang on a minute, that's OCD. And it's such a key point that you made, Elliot, because obviously you had HOCD latched. So at that time, you were more aware of how OCD operates. So when a new team tries to latch now or back then in the club, the contamination OCD, you were more aware of its tricks. But I think not aware of OCD, you don't even know what it is. When that initially latches, think how scary that, how isolating that.
And also like
memory.
Whatever like new themes pop up, and we always say this, like more often than not, it has some linkage with your other teams as well. So like Elliot, for you, for example, your main thing is like fear and fear of just being stuck, which is why it darts from one thing to the next. With contamination, right? If it fully latched, it would have been the same thing, that I don't want germs on me because I will physically feel so anxious and uncomfortable, like, and I don't know if I'll be able to get out of it. So it's the same as with your HOCD, POCD stuff as well. That if this happens, then I feel like I'm just going to be like, I won't be able to feel at peace anymore.
Yeah. Also, when I was struggling with POCD, I had moments with contamination OCD because I had so much. Well, I struggled with guilt, but my contamination OCD was fueled by guilt because I wasn't afraid about myself, and I was afraid that I may contaminate other people. So I will feel guilty forever if they die because of me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sam, did you ever have contamination OCD?
Yeah. Obviously, POCD was the main one, but there's always stuff going on in there, in the background where it doesn't latch as much because I was so consumed with guilt with POCD.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's other areas of your life which is affected by other themes. So, for example, with contamination OCD, washing my hands excessively, but it didn't really bother me as much. I just thought, that's OCD. So my hands got really dry at one point. But yeah, it's not as extreme as your story, Mo.
Yeah.
Other situations like that would be contaminating someone else, or maybe accident. For example, like when I'm feeding my dog, right? I can kind of feel it latch, like I'm going to contaminate his food or something like that. It all links into the core fears of causing harm to someone or to an animal or to something. So maybe without knowing, put a drug in his food or something like that.
If you look at that, like, because for you with POCD, it's classically chronic guilt and shame, right? So for you, the contamination is, and there is a certain responsibility and obviously like moral like narrative attached to it. Right? So with contamination, you giving something poisonous or contaminated or bad to an animal or somebody else, even with you, Alexander, it's that sense of responsibility that latches on then, that I don't want to be responsible for something bad happening to somebody else. So it's contamination that's happening to you. It's contamination that happened to Elliot. It's contamination that happened to me. But it's like the shades of it can like vary from person to person depending on what they're overall afraid of.
I remember I remember once, right, when contamination OCD latched. Someone at work, I was in an office, and someone came in and they were ill. So they just come in they just had a stomach bug, right? So they'd been sick all night and they came in. And that, I remember feeling very triggered at that and asking to move seats, go and sit somewhere else, not look at them and things like that, because I was so scared of getting ill, picking up an illness. And, OCD goes exaggerating everything. You're going to die from if I sit next to this person. So it's latched like that, but never as severe as POCD is latched or false memory and anything like that.
I've never had POCD, like I've never had harm OCD or POCD. Like even though my themes were, there was a lot of guilt involved. Like for example, with like relationship OCD, a lot of like really bad guilt with that. But for some reason, it just never went on to something like harm OCD or POCD. Like that doesn't scare me. Like I don't know. I'm not afraid of that.
I find it funny how
Sam,
Sorry, Alex, go on. Yeah.
Just wanted to ask Sam if he had like elements of harm OCD when he was struggling with POCD. because this give related, because I was struggling with it too.
Did you say this is a question to me, right? You said to Sam.
Yeah. If you struggle
You
with
say
harm OCD as well, along with POCD.
elements of yes. I mean, it all linked into the guilt really, but it was so fused by POCD and like how real it felt as well. And what if this was true? What would others think of you? But yeah, I was being triggered by harm. It all sort of links into one really. But simple answer to your question.
Yeah, I find it interesting how when in some themes you actually have sub themes within the theme. So with HOCD, mine was societal rejection, mine was like, you know, identity, you know, fear of like being stuck forever. Like, and obviously, yeah, with POCD, you've got like, yeah, causing harm, you've got the shame, you've got the bad person thing. It's funny how like I think there's loads of different drivers within each theme, and like sometimes those sub themes would be bigger for one person than another person. So for me, for my HOCD, my fear of rejection was even bigger, miles bigger than the fear of being gay, right? So but for someone else, it might be different. They actually might genuinely be scared of being gay because of like, you know, culture reasons and stuff like that, and not be so scared about the fear of rejection. So I think it's key to like look at that when you're really scared of something, what actual sub theme is driving it potentially.
Yeah, that's such a key.
Yeah, go on, Sam. I remember, to get under that as well. Like, I had an exposure where I went into a shop and I was like, "Oh, I'm shopping for my boyfriend. Can you help me?" And I remember that was just the best exposure for me. It was like a weight off my shoulders, just because I was so scared of rejection, right? So I think those big leaps as well were just important. Go on, Sam.
Yeah, it's such a key point that you said about you're not necessarily being scared of being gay. It's scared of, you know, what others would think, right? And I had that a lot with POCD. So it was more the fear of being stuck with the guilt forever.
Yeah.
Fear. And that was so subtle because I was so focused on breaking down the beliefs around POCD. I was missing a trick because I was actually missing breaking down the fear of fear aspect. And that kept me up for so long because I didn't really, because I would sort of pause life and I not really live life until POCD was gone. But that wasn't really fear of fear, hence why that latched so much, because I was waiting to feel recovered to live my life. I was like, right, I can only live my life once POCD's gone. Well, that's not how it works because then you got fear of fear at play and waiting for a feeling and watching how you're feeling, blah, blah, blah. So it's such a subtle way, but I think with most OCD sufferers, it's the fear of fear. It's the main catalyst for driving all the suffering.
Yeah.
Definitely. Next question.
Well, guys,
Funny, we get a time where we all jump in at once, and then we get a time look at each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like then we're like pausing to be like, oh, who wants to speak next? Yeah, no, I think that because no matter how many times you cover this, I think when someone is actually like someone might watch this video and be like, oh, interesting insights. But when they are actually going through a new theme coming in or they're going through a setback or a relapse, all this knowledge will be like poof, just evaporate in thin air. And it's just one of those things that you'll have to go through it to be able to learn this as well. Because you like it hardly ever happens when someone has this knowledge without even going through it. They have the knowledge from these videos, for example, and when they're going through it, they're really able to fully implement it. I mean that really happens. So, but yeah, I mean like, so it's something that you don't need to beat yourself up for. You don't need to feel like a failure if you're not able to prevent a setback or a relapse. You don't need to feel like a failure if a new theme comes up. It's just how the disorder works. It's just what we have genetically in our system. So not being hard on yourself is so important over here, because the first thing people jump to is somehow blaming themselves in a terrible way that they've done something wrong that has caused the relapse or the setback.
I just want to say something that even if you're watching this video, right, that is a huge thing, right? Because I was suffering the most before I even knew what OCD was, right? The fact you're on this channel listening to people speak about OCD, right? That's obviously not going to be everything. That's not all you need, obviously, right? And things will still latch, obviously. But just knowing that, just knowing there's 4 people on this video now talking about what you're going through, because I had none of that. And think how alone I felt, isolated, scared with themes like POCD, real event, false memory. I was so scared to even talk about it out of fear of rejection, misunderstood. I just knew it vaguely as intrusive thoughts. All right, so I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. That the fact you're even watching this video, the fact you're in the WhatsApp group, just like one.
Like, imagine if the YouTube channel was what it is now at the time that you and I came in, because you and I came in like when the channel was like what 20 videos or something like that. Now like there's like so what we have 1800 something like that. We have so many videos now, and we've covered so many topics and so many different nuances of the journey. And like at the time we were just like at times like what free balling it in that way. So like I think it's just yeah, and
What do you think?
perspective for people who are watching right now. We didn't have like this amount of videos. Elliot, what do you think?
I was going to say, like, in those times, then you two especially, did like just the hope keep you going? Then did you always think, right, I'm going to find a way out of this? Like, what sort of kept you going? Do you think?
I just think I was in survival mode. Like looking back, every day it was like getting out of bed.
Yeah.
I just it's going to get better. I hope it gets better. I had to just keep going, right? But yeah, it's a really good question, because if you ask me now, I don't know how I pushed through, right? And I don't want to just be really negative, but the place I was in, I just, not even know what it was, mind, and I'm in that kind of place. But then you're frantically looking for an answer. You're googling your symptoms, so you get somewhere, and just bit by bit, I managed to see intrusive thoughts and then anxiety, and then OCD, and then you start ticking off the symptoms, and and you start seeing pages like this. But yeah, that initial moment, how scary that was, I don't know how I pushed through, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, especially for the taboo themes as well, like especially POCD. That's I had when I had the latching attempt for that. For me personally, that was scarier than HOCD. Even though HOCD latched for me, the actual POCD latching attempt actually frightened me. Not even gonna lie, it really did frighten. So I can only imagine how you felt.
That's even though I know he operates the WhatsApp group, all the videos on the channel, and like to have that without nothing.
Yeah, there's so much now. There's so much out there now that wasn't there before. Like I think for me, it was just always not that I didn't have very low moments or moments of hopelessness. Of course I did. But I think, and like largely speaking, I've just always been of the mindset um that whatever happens, I'll find a way out. Like even if I'm not able to solve the situation, I'll just find a way forward. That's just been my like mindset with everything in life, with academics, with friendships, with like mental health, with other like hurdles in life and challenges. Like I've just never been someone who's been like, oh, this can't happen, or this is happening this way, I'm giving up, this is the most terrible thing, I'm just going to sit back and just wallow in this negativity. I've just always been like, no, I'm like, I'll find a way forward. And somehow that has always helped me in literally every single situation in life. And I'm not scared of things as much. Especially now. I mean, of course, when I had OCD, I was catastrophically afraid of things. But now that's gone, I just feel like, yeah, I mean, sure, whatever happens, I'll find a way.
That's great points. Elliot, just another answer to your question. I was very lucky with what I had around me. So family, friends, because they saw me at my utmost worst, right? Crying, to not even know who OCD was at that time. So the natural response that they would do would be to comfort me, to give me reassurance. So I had obviously some people aren't as lucky as that. I didn't have anyone around them. So that helped, having a partner, really supporting friends as well, even just to take the effort to look into it or what you might be suffering with. But I'm always grateful for that, because like I said, some people don't have that network. Imagine going through that alone, right? Imagine having no one around you, living in your house on your own, and you're triggered by something, not even know what OCD was, right? straight away. Gratitude.
You're making Alexander feel afraid because he lives by himself now. He doesn't live with family. He's going to freak out by himself now. But yeah.
By the way, I remember Sam's first video on the channel, like maybe 2 years ago, and I started watching it, but then like I still was learning English, and I decided that his accent is too British, so I can't understand him. I just quit.
Too farmer.
When I look back at videos like that, I just think how young I was, like how different I am today. From
different haircut. Yeah.
Damn, I think I remember watching that video and like you could just sense the taboo theme in POCD though, because you didn't actually really refer to like the granularity of it. I remember obviously it's still a good POCD video, but I just think it shows how like taboo this stuff can be. Like, you know, it was interesting.
Even then, like, because when I did that big video, that was probably about 3 years ago now. But even then, it was probably still scared of it coming back, right? So I broke the principles down, but you could tell I was scared of it. You know, it might suddenly latch again. So, and that just takes time to get into the situation I'm in today, and to break that down, and just because it takes a while to actually believe it, right? So if you watch that video, you can see I'm certainly quite scared of it still. But like today, completely different. But
I remember watching some of Sam's initial videos, and I was like, his hands are all over the place. Like it's just
it's all coming out now. Now it's all coming out.
It's all this on, and I'm just like the hand gestures. I mean, and so I think I pointed it out to you a couple of times. Like it was a little distracting. I'm all for everybody doing whatever body language they're doing, but it was a little distracting for the video because the camera was like this and the hands were really in front of it. So I was like, yeah, just like slightly lesser hand gestures if you can.
Yeah, and also doing these videos that when I was doing them, I think I was about 20 at the time, and that was a huge exposure, right? So I'm glad that because that was like the next thing for me, you know, talking about OCD openly. So I saw it as an exposure, and hence why I was scared to do them, right? But you can see over time how the confidence has grown because I've just got used to that. I've got used to speaking in front of a camera, speaking to different people. So, but that's what I needed because I was obviously still. So it's great.
Just from a general standpoint as well, I mean, like not everybody is instantly comfortable either. And obviously you're talking about your own mental health. That's a different experience as well. Now it's like if the camera is on, like ask me literally any question and I'll blurt it out. Like I'll just talk to you about it. So yeah, Sam, do you have to run?
Not yet. Unless it goes on for another 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm in no rush to end it as well. But like any other thing that any of you want to bring up or touch on. Otherwise, I'm also okay to end it as well. No worries.
I'll add something in. I think when I've had like sort of POCD and like HOCD like sort of there and sort of taboo themes, no matter how taboo it sounds, right, there's always a way to like break it down and bring your fear down. Like when you look at stuff at face value with OCD, you know, POCD, HOCD, it's easy to think, right, oh, right, that's terrible. Or magic thinking, harm OCD, right, that's terrible. That's the worst thing ever. But there's always a way to like change your perspective on it and just bring it down, you know. And I think it's important to remember that your brain is malleable, right? It changes when you chip away at it bit by bit. So just because you think something is bad now, it doesn't mean it's going to be bad forever. Just because you're scared now, it doesn't mean you're going to be scared forever. Otherwise, people wouldn't recover from OCD, right? So
and
I think
people
that's
people who are just starting to that are literally just starting with the recovery journey with something especially like POCD or harm OCD, because those are the ones where the fear is just really amped up quite a bit. I always say this to them that as a starting point, like it can help to look at less about what the topic of the theme is and looking at what do you think will happen as a result of your fear coming true, right? Because then it comes into fear of rejection, losing family, loved ones hating us, friends judging us, being cancelled. That's one for many people. Losing your job, things like that, right? Never being able to see your kids again. So I I tell them that that can be a good starting point to get into it a little bit, where you can look at these aspects and start breaking those down. That in a general sense, even if it's not because of the topic of your theme, even if it's something else, and you, let's say, are not able to see your kids, right? Or something happens where you guys are separated or loved ones do not like you as much. Can you work on accepting that? Can you work on breaking that down? And that can help just ease into the topic as well a little bit, and not
Yeah.
immediately jump directly to like I had a call with someone, and the very first thing, like on the call, that they asked me was at the start of the session was, um, how do I accept doing something non-consensual? Because I feel like if that would be the worst thing if I don't know if someone has given consent or not. And I was like, hold on, like, hold your horses. Like, we don't have to jump directly. Like, we don't have to go for the jugular over here. Like, we can slow down, take it step by step. Like, look at what the underlying fears are behind that. What do you think will happen as a result? And that's all there is then. Again, the same
Yeah.
fears that I listed down just with POCD. It's similar things, you know?
Yeah, and it's important to remember that when you come in for your first session, it's going to feel like climbing Mount Everest. You're going to thinking, because all these beliefs and all these things and perspectives that we'll say, and it's like, it just feels like information overload at times. But this is what you said, Mim, and why it's so important just to, take your time, step by step, day by day process. It's not, right, one session, get it all nailed, work on my beliefs.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Start forcing it, you start rushing it. But it's important to remember that it's going to take time, and it's, imagine it is like climbing Mount Everest, right? You're not going to do it in one day, are you? You're doing it bit by bit, chipping away, and then you're gradually working and breaking away. So,
Sam, please, no need to get emotional. It's okay. Like,
oh, it's not in the eye.
sensory motor latching on for you, you know?
What's that?
Sensory motor OCD latching on for you
Yeah.
now. Like with Elliott before. Elliott is going to
I'll be
start
blinking.
sneezing again. I've mentioned sensory motor now.
I'll be blinking.
Sneezing.
Sam-
Your struggle with sneezing OCD. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I heard someone once also, maybe on the Facebook group or something, someone had a fear once of sneezing and their heart stopping. And so they were afraid of sneezing. And it was just like, oh God, like the anticipation of like you about to sneeze and then not wanting to get the flu. Yeah, that's another.
And what you'd also, like doing a job like this, seeing that some themes or some fears can sound ridiculous. Like there's no logic to it, but you've got to remember how OCD can latch,
Yeah.
right? Just because for us, you see it from their perspective, you go, oh, yeah, I see how OCD latches to that. So, like you said there, some fears are like, what? But you're
No,
like,
so
yeah,
I had,
go.
like, I think magical thinking is one of those aspects. Like I had magical thinking since essentially I was a kid, right? Like just afraid of two completely unrelated things, feeling like I'll have these AirPods, for example, right? I'll be like, oh, if I keep them on the left corner of my table, um, tomorrow, like my friends are not going to speak to me. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, wait, where do I put them? Maybe I put them back where it was. And then trying to figure out what's the right, like, corner or what's the right position to place them. I've had that as a kid, and that's just like the most ridiculous scene on planet Earth. But like it just makes like no sense, but it
I,
latches as real as possible.
I had that if I didn't do certain stuff before football. There we go, football again.
Yeah.
I felt like my team was going to lose.
I
Right? And
think
that was from a very
I think most football players or football teams I've heard have superstitions, right? Like days leading up to a very important football match, they probably have like certain rituals or superstitions of what will cause the match to go wrong.
Yeah. I remember I'd have that as well. Like I'd put on like my whole left boot, left sock, left shin pad, like the other side of my body would have nothing on. And I remember that. It's stupid. But
Yeah.
I think at this stage you just see all through that. No, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with having, but I don't see the point of it. But that's why, because the realistic mindset that I don't think that what what shoe I put on first isn't going to affect the outcome, right? But that sounds ridiculous, but I can see why that would latch to some people, or why people believe that. Me, I just don't. It just doesn't even, because you think, oh, someone with OCD, that would, they should do that. Stereotypical, but it's the opposite. Like where someone should be, I'm probably the opposite of that, right? So it's just stereotypical stuff.
Another one is, I think another common one is like that people feel like is the sky will fall down on them, and they are terrified, even though the sky is not like a physical layer. It's literally just like up and up and up and up. It's open.
When that happens, can you let me know when the sky falls on you?
I didn't have that fear, by the way. I never had the fear of the sky falling, so I'm good on that front. It hasn't happened yet.
Don't you know much about it if it did fall on you, to be fair.
I mean, sky falling on me is like what? The air falling on me, which is already happening. Like, so, and I love being in the clouds. Whenever, if I'm on an airplane, I love traveling through clouds. So I'm okay with the sky hitting me because it's essentially hitting me. So I'm good with that. But I think this was a fun one. I think we covered quite a few things, different themes, but also like some other aspects of different things.
It was flexible and not rigid, like you need to be in your recovery.
Yeah. It's good. I think next time we're not even going to have a preliminary discussion. I'm just going to press record and automatically we'll just be like, oh, what do we talk about?
Yeah, that'd be real talk.
Yeah, that will be very real talk. No artificial additions to it. But guys, thanks for being here. Good chat. Have a good rest of the day. Sam, enjoy your evening. Don't go crazy. Elliot, please wipe your nose. Alexander, like freak out in front of your girlfriend. It's okay. Guys, I'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.